In the village of Okunwo, the most feared sound was the beating of the Ikoro drum, for it meant another widow was about to face the 7 days. It was a tradition no one dared question, passed down for generations. Every woman whose husband died would be locked alone in a small, dark room at the shrine, given only water and a little food. If she came out alive after 7 days, she was innocent. If she died, it meant she had killed her husband. Many had died, some survived, but never the same. It was a custom Simi had always hated. She had spoken against it many times, but never too loudly, for such talk would earn a person trouble. She believed no one should be treated like that, and she never thought she would be the one to wear the white wrapper. Simi loved her husband, Ade, with all her heart. He was a kind man, never raising his voice at her. Together, they had built a quiet life, raising their 2 children, Kola, 6 years old, and little Ayo, 5 years old. Ade was strong and full of life. He often carried the children on his shoulders, making them squeal with laughter. And he told Simi she was the best part of his world. But one morning, Ade woke with a strange weakness in his limbs. His forehead burned hot, his breathing shallow. The village healer gave him herbs, but his condition grew worse with each passing hour. Simi stayed by his side, sponging his skin, begging him to eat. His lips were dry, his eyes glassy. She prayed silently that the sickness would pass as quickly as it had come. By evening, his body began to shake. He held her hand tightly, as though he knew his time was near. Before dawn, Ade was gone. The sound that left Simi's mouth was unlike any cry she had ever made. It tore through the walls and reached the ears of the neighbors. Moments later, the drum began to beat in the distance. The sound filled her with dread. She knew what it meant. Her mother rushed in and wrapped her arms around her, but the old woman's voice was trembling as she whispered for Simi to submit to the ritual. If she refused, the elders could punish her family. Simi thought of her children and the danger they would face. Her heart felt like it was breaking all over again as she agreed. On the morning of the ritual, she tied the white mourning wrapper around her waist. Her children clung to her legs, their eyes wide and wet. She kissed them and promised silently in her heart that she would return. The villagers walked behind her to the shrine, the air heavy with judgment and curiosity. The room was smaller than she imagined, the mud walls cold and the air thick. A clay pot of water stood in the corner. The heavy wooden door closed behind her with a dull thud. She sat on the floor, pulling her knees to her chest, her mind drifting to memories of Ade's laughter, the smell of his skin after a day's work, the way he used to call her name. The first day passed in slow silence. Early the next morning, she heard the soft scrape of the food tray sliding under the door. She drank from the pot and forced herself to eat. The room was still. Hours passed. She lay on the floor, drifting between exhaustion and grief. Then, on the second night, something changed. The door that was never supposed to open until the 7th day began to creak. Slowly, quietly. The sound was faint, but in the suffocating darkness, it was louder than her heartbeat. Simi froze. A strip of pale moonlight spilled into the room, followed by the tall figure of the high priest. His heavy robes brushed the ground as he stepped inside, closing the door softly behind him. The smell of palm wine clung to him. Simi stared in disbelief. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice shaking. The priest's face was calm, almost amused. "I came to save you from what is coming," he said, "but only if you do as I say." Her eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing hers. "Do you think all those widows who died here were poisoned? Number, they died because they refused me. This place is mine. Everything that happens inside it is mine. If you do not comply, you will not live alive. But if you please me." His smile was slow and heavy. "You might live." She could barely process what she was hearing. The priest, the man who was supposed to guard the purity of the ritual, was using it to prey on women. "Don't come near me," she said, stepping back until her spine pressed against the wall. The priest laughed, a deep sound that made the small room feel smaller. "You think you have a choice? There is nothing you can do. He reached for her. Something inside Simi snapped. She ducked, pushing him back, but he was strong. His hands grabbed at her arms. She twisted, her nails digging into his skin. He snarled, trying to pin her. In a desperate surge, she drove her knee up into his groin. He doubled over with a groan, clutching himself. Simi didn't wait. She lunged for the door, flung it open, and ran. Her bare feet slapped against the dirt, the cool night air filling her lungs. Behind her, she heard his voice roar her name, but she didn't look back. She ran through the silent village until she reached her home. Her mother was sitting on the mat outside, her face pale when she saw Simi in the white mourning cloth. "You're in danger," her mother cried, rushing to her. "What have you done?" "I had to leave," Simi gasped. Her mother's expression hardened. "Leave? Do you know what this means? You've ruined everything. You've shamed us. They will come for you. You have brought punishment to your children." Simi's two little ones were sleeping beside their grandmother. She crouched, shaking, and touched their faces. Tears blurred her vision. "Listen to me," she said. "You have to hear what happened." Her mother wanted to scold her again, but something in Simi's voice stopped her, and so Simi told her what happened. When she finished, her mother just stared, speechless. By morning, the drum began to beat again, but this time, it was a harsh, rapid rhythm signifying abomination. The high priest stood in the village square, his voice loud and commanding. Simi has fled the trial of innocence. She has confessed her guilt through her actions. She killed her husband, and now she runs from justice. The people murmured, some gasping, others shaking their heads. When Simi tried to speak, to tell the truth, the priest raised his hand for silence. No one wanted to hear her. In Okonwo, a woman who broke the widow's trial was as good as guilty. Simi and her family were sentenced to banishment from the village. By afternoon, the punishment began. Villagers poured into the dusty road, sweeping Simi out with brooms and leaves, the ritual of cleansing for those cast out. The walk to the edge of the village felt endless. Children stared, old women spat, men turned their faces away. The white mourning cloth clung to her skin as if mocking her. At last, the familiar hut of Okonwo disappeared behind her. Ahead lay the winding path to her mother's birthplace, many miles away. Her children clung to her hands, their face full of fear and confusion. Her mother said nothing as they walked. Simi's mind burned. She had been humiliated, thrown out like dirt. The priest had lied, and the whole village believed him. But she was still breathing, and she would not forget. She would not forgive. 5 years after Simi was swept out of Okunwo in disgrace, Simi returned. She came quietly, not as the shamed widow the villagers remembered, but as a stranger no one recognized. Her skin glowed with health, her figure fuller, her face sharper, her beauty deeper. She had traded in different towns and carried herself like someone who had seen the world. She entered the village as a humble trader, selling colorful plastics, basins, and kitchen goods from a wooden cart. Her smile was warm, and she spoke kindly to everyone, but she kept a careful distance from those who had known her best. To them, she was just another passing merchant. Over the weeks, she began to visit certain homes. It was the homes of women she remembered from before, women who had survived the 7 days. Some avoided her at first, carrying a silent shame. Others listened, but would not speak of their time in the widow's room. Simi pressed gently, telling them it was not their fault. The guilt was not theirs. The fault lay with the man who used the sacred ritual as a trap. Many shook their heads, still afraid. She told them their silence was a danger. If they kept quiet, their daughters might one day face the same evil. Even if the high priest was gone, another man could take his place and do worse. Slowly, the fear in their eyes began to change into something else. It was anger. Her visits became more frequent, but she told them not to share her plans. The day of action had to come without warning. When the time came, no one would stand alone. When that day arrived, it began like any other. By afternoon, women poured into the village square, more and more joining until it was a tide of voices. They came from every corner: widows, married women, even young women who had never been married but knew the injustice well. The air was thick with shouts, not of grief, but of defiance. It was the largest gathering Okunwo had ever seen, of women united for one cause. They spoke of grief doubled by cruelty, of the darkness in the widow's room, of how it crushed not only bodies but spirits. Then, in the swelling noise, some began to recognize Simi. Whispers turned to pointing fingers. That's her, the one who killed her husband. She's here to poison more women against their men. The men of the village tried to push through the crowd to seize her, but they were met with a wall of women. Sticks, stones, and bare hands blocked the way. Simi stood in the middle, her voice clear above the noise.
We will not be victims any longer. We will decide our own fate.
The riot spread to the high priest's compound. His walls were torn down, his possessions smashed, his house set ablaze. Smoke curled into the sky as he ran, but the men of the village caught him and dragged him back. The elders were divided. Some spat, saying the women were out of control and would soon come to their senses. Others looked at the sheer number of them and knew this was not a passing madness. Something deep had been stirred. The high priest called Simi a liar again, shouting that she had killed her husband and now sought revenge. But the noise was too loud. The people demanded judgment. In the end, the elders ordered the priest to stand trial before the gods. The rule was simple. If you lied under oath to the gods, death would follow swiftly. The priest's face paled. He stalled, tried to speak over the decision, but the crowd surged and the men held him fast. Realizing there was no escape, he tried to run again, but he was caught, bound, and beaten until his voice broke into screams. It was then, bloodied and panting, that he confessed. He told them he had used the widow's trial to take women for himself. Those who refused, he killed. Some men, he admitted, he poisoned, just so he could get their wives into that room. Gasps rose from the crowd. Women wept openly. Men cursed him. When the last of his words faded, the elders stripped him of his title and declared him unfit to serve. He was dragged away to face punishment beyond the village. He was dragged away by the local police. That same day, the elders announced the end of the widow's trial. The custom was gone. The women lifted Simi onto their shoulders, singing her name. She had come back from shame to free them all. Even those who had once called her guilty now joined in the song. Her banishment was lifted. She could return to her husband's house. As the noise of celebration faded, she walked alone through the doorway she had not seen in 5 years. Dust lay thick on the floor, but the walls were the same. Her hands touched the rough clay, and memories came rushing back. Ade's laughter filling the room, the sound of the children playing outside, the smell of their evening meals. She stood in the silence, tears sliding down her cheeks. She had not been able to save him, but she had saved countless others, and in that moment, in the stillness of her home, Simi knew her fight had been worth it.